Just that sort of. Right.
Oh, he doesn't know.
All right,
New members of our committee.
Yes. There are some. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the House General and Housing Committee. And we are now, it's still the 22nd of January, and we are now going to hear H38. Coach, would you like to introduce yourself for the record?
I'm Kevin Coach Christie, representative from Hartford, and I also chair the Vermont Human Rights Commission. H38 is a bill asking for additional support, to the commission for the work that we do for the state of Vermont. When you think of all of the members of our community that are protected, by our laws, which we all are. And it can be something, as simple, as think of that time when you went to park and you had your family member who might have been disabled and needing to get to an appointment at a particular time. And that family member who had a placard and you're driving them and you go to park and there's no parking spaces. Now you say to yourself, well, maybe, your mind starts to run and you say, well, maybe they weren't aware that there were only 3 per 100, or there was some weird criteria that a particular town might have come up with. But at the end of the day, when it comes to that particular, let's say, grievance, there should be a space when it's available, and it shouldn't be occupied by someone who isn't. So if you see somebody continually using that space, and it's being allowed, let's say, by a landlord, or being allowed by, an association, a tenants association, or whatever it might be, that would constitute a grievance or a violation, of that accommodation. I know until you have to use it, you don't realize how important it is. You go to Walgreens or whatever it is, you see somebody just pull up and park, and I'm just running in. But I got there and it takes me 10 minutes to get out of the freaking car, excuse me. And then, it takes an additional amount of time to get into the building. Now, back in the day, I might have been that jerky person that might have did it. But after you've had to live it, it becomes very apparent how important it really is. And so if we think about that with every incident, of accommodation, I was talking to our committee assistant, and he asked, so how do you guys come up with your cases? And I said, well, there was a time when CVOEO did tests for us. And the tests were pull an ad from the newspaper, call the landlord. This is Mr. So-and-so, and I'd like to inquire about the room. Oh, come on over. Hey, Blood, I'm looking for an apartment. We don't have any. That happens. And it still happens. Okay. Now that might seem, like, what just happened here? That's what happens. Okay. Some of the, and I think when you hear the statistical data and from the commission itself around the types and numbers of cases, you'll get that statistical data. I'm just trying to frame a picture of things that we could all kind of relate to that aren't right. Just aren't right. Regardless of stripes or, where you stand, just some things aren't right. And that's the role, of the commission, right now, obviously, our housing cases are some of the most horrific, of the cases, especially with different family, constructs and people saying, well, we only have, room for 3 kids and you have 4 kids. Well, a set of bunk beds in that other room, I mean, that's how most of us grew up, with bigger families, So when people find ways to exclude, they need to think it through, and it needs to be really, relative and important. But those are the kinds of things. And that gets us to the point where, we are getting inundated with, cases, of all kinds. And it's not to say that we're able to even take them all, even if we had, the massive numbers, but, of support. But we do need to expand the support in order to just help Vermonters feel like they're being, heard and supported, in this work. So that's the overview. If that helps.
Sophie, did you want to take us through the bill?
It's a very short bill. Essentially, these are,
Wait, excuse me, wait just a minute.
do you want me to move down here?
Well, come sit here next to Coach, but I think the question is, before you start, Coach,
Before
do
you
people
start,
want to ask questions of Coach?
well, also, we have Amanda Garces here who works for, does everything that Big Hartman doesn't do. Stephen, do you know, either of you, what the uptick in cases? Do you have any data on the uptick in cases?
I think if you're going to speak, let's see if we can get you up there.
Okay.
Why don't we just,
Okay.
Pull your chair up.
Chair.
why don't you share?
Can I put this in?
Sure.
Thank you.
And could you just state your name for the record?
Sure. And I think my executive director was hoping that they will come and do a presentation for you all next week if possible. For the record, my name is Amanda Garces. I am the Director of Policy, Education and Outreach for the Vermont Human Rights Commission. And thank you, Coach. Yeah, so I can give a little brief overview of who we are. We are the agency in charge of discrimination. In our state, we have 3 buckets. One is we investigate complaints in discrimination in housing, places of public accommodation, which includes everything from schools, police, roads, and state employment. So we are only in charge of all the Vermont state employees, and the Attorney General's office is in charge of the private employers. And for the past year, our investigations have increased, skyrocketed. We have currently a backlog of cases. We have 7 staff members that are not able to meet the current demand, like the numbers that this is why we're requesting these positions. And we want to make sure that all Vermonters have access to justice under our Vermont anti-discrimination laws. So why this matters, and I can send you this pamphlet at the end. Our investigations often involve really alternate issues. People that come here are not looking to get money or become rich to use our system. They really are. It's really heartbreaking. Actually, a lot of the cases we have discrimination in fair housing, that is everything from evictions to refusal of housing, voucher denials, refusal to allow assistance animals, and harassment. In our public accommodations, we are our cases include schools. We have seen a skyrocket of schools right now on harassment. People with service dogs being denied access, individuals being discriminated against by businesses or public agencies. And in workplace discrimination, we see state employees who are subject to discrimination or harassment. So we cannot really meet the demands right now. So in this fiscal year, we have, as of December, have already turned away around 50 folks. So it makes my job really hard to be in the community, be like, sorry, you know. Our executive director, for example, right now has 10 cases sitting there unable to be assigned to investigators because we're so backlogged. One of our investigators left just a couple of weeks ago. We're in the process of hiring the replacement, but because it is a burnout job, right? Like it's just a lot of cases, and they're hard. They're really, really hard. So I just give you a really, as of December, we have about 68 number of active investigations and conciliations, about 15 cases in enforcement and litigation, 15 in litigation. Last year, we have, for the first time, an in-house litigator, which is a game changer, really. What the litigation does is really push for our laws, our civil rights laws to be expanded. And we're able to do the work more. We still have other law offices that we still contract with. We have accepted, as of December, 42 new complaints, about 31 that have been closed and settled. So this is a great thing about our office, is that we're able to settle cases, which also have implications for all the public. So all of our cases really have a public component, where whether it's people will do trainings, we will train everybody. So in some of the cases, we are training educators to ensure that things don't happen again. For a building who had a discrimination case, we can train the managers. So if you have owners that have multiple buildings, then we can support that. So like I said before, we've turned away as of December. So these numbers have increased about 50 folks that we just can't take right now, right? So we would love to take more. And so what we're asking for is 3 staff attorney positions so that we can give all these cases and start investigations. We're hoping for an outreach person that will work with me. I currently do this job, plus I do all the outreach trainings and everything that has to do with working with the community. It would be great to have a dedicated person to help with the outreach. We would like to have a case, an intake person. Right now, it's just like our cases take a while. So we get a phone call, then we have to do the intake, and sometimes that process even takes a long time. We're also asking for a part-time social worker. Our cases are very high in trauma. So it's really, we've got to train on trauma informed. That's not enough. You know, like people really need a lot of support that sometimes we cannot give to them. And we would like to be able to support Vermonters that are experiencing high level trauma, to really support them in case management and see what other resources we can get them while with kids. Our cases are not solved like this, so we can't fix things right away. Our cases take 1, 2 to 3 years, depends on the investigation. So we are not the agency to kind of deal with problems right away. We are asking for paralegal to support a litigator in all the cases that we have. We see forthcoming more cases that will be litigated. A part-time mediator so that our cases can resolve quicker. And the intake specialist I mentioned before.
Can I just
Yes.
Go
quickly,
ahead.
since we haven't had unless others, well, some folks have copies of the bill, but and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to be clear to folks as you're talking or thinking about this, that this is actually for next year, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is
fiscal year 20. I just wanted to put
Yeah,
that.
well, it's not part of the, let's say, the BAA.
Right,
part of the B.
but I didn't want people to be confused because we are gonna be doing that in the BAA as well, but this bill is for the next fiscal
Right.
year.
That was one of the questions that I had was, whether whether we need to be considerate in the Budget Adjustment Act of,
Yeah, let's.
We did include two positions for the BA.
I just didn't want
Well,
people to be confused that this was,
Let's
There is-
try to sort this,
Yes.
tease this apart for just a minute. Number one, as to the Human Rights Commission, its function, what it does, et cetera, you will be appearing before us.
Right.
And I think we should remember that, and that's a time to talk more about what you do. I think today, and H38, I think the bill should just be laid out. What are you asking for, et cetera. I think as to the budget for the 26 budget, that will be a situation where this committee needs to recommend what recommend to the appropriations committee. What are we going to do? What do we support? And we need to prioritize. So that's something where we have time. I do think it's good to go through the bill. But finally, as to the BAA, let me be very specific. Today and tomorrow, I am drafting a draft of this committee's recommendation to the Appropriations Committee. We owe them on Thursday. Yes, tomorrow. We owe them a letter that says where we stand. We are hearing that issue tomorrow at 11. And by then, I have to have a draft of what it is that we put in it. I have emailed Big Harmon
Correct.
asking for language. Exactly what do you want, how much, and for what? I have not received anything.
Oh, I thought they.
I think it would be great if you tell us today and also send me some language as to what you would like in the BAA. The advantage of the BAA is if something is in the BAA, it gets you the money 3 or 4 months ahead of time. It's what would be in the budget. Sorry for the interruption.
sorry.
Take it away.
No.
It was confusing for it maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, that was a whole lot of conversation and and just to be clear, there is a list of things in the bill that she just listed, the positions are listed in the bill. So to clarify, these positions in this bill are separate from what you would be requesting, or they're partially inclusive?
They're partially inclusive.
Thank you.
So it is my understanding that, and I will confer with our executive director that for the EBB, we had, my brain just went. So we always work within a 35,000 shortfall, like vacancy savings, for this fiscal year, which is part of that. We did request 2 positions, which are the intake person and a staff attorney additional, and we're not sure, if it's included, because that was for the governors.
Okay.
So I will make sure that they will
I
send you
mean,
all the information.
what are the positions, how much, what's the amount? And I do think it might be worthwhile if Sophie, you just walked us quickly through the bill, and then you can continue.
All right, yes, again, Sophie Zadatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel. So this bill proposes providing funding for 6 additional full-time positions and 2 additional part-time positions within the Human Rights Commission. As noted, this would be for fiscal year 2026. The positions are those that were listed: 1 full-time permanent classified communications and outreach coordinator, 1 full-time permanent classified intake specialist, 3 full-time permanent exempt staff attorney investigators, 1 full-time permanent exempt paralegal, 1 part-time permanent classified mediator, and one part-time permanent classified social worker / case manager. The amount of funds being requested is 25,000 for education and outreach activities. And then for those positions, $7,616 for salary and benefits, 18,000 for related operating expenses and equipment, and 50,000 for additional office space.
Thank you. One thing that would help us, at least help me, and I don't need it now, but at some point, it would be good, and perhaps when you testify before us about the HRC, it would be good to put this, to help us put this request in the full request that's in the bill, in the context of how many positions do you have now? That are, you've made the case that that's inadequate, but tell us how many full-time permanent communications and outreach do you have a coordinator? In other words, we need to know this is sort of adding to what, and what's the size of your total budget?
I can send you that. I can tell you right now how many positions we have.
You can do that.
also
I think
send
the
you
time to do
all
that
of
is when you appear before us
Right.
next week.
We have.
Also, I have heard, but I can't remember, so I could be completely wrong. I have heard that there's, is it Legal Aid or somebody else in the state does similar work and they can't do as much because they're going to lose federal funding. And that puts additional strain on you. Is that right?
It's part of the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
The other two, and it's only two people.
Yeah, what's his name now? I can't remember it.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so Vermont Legal Aid refers cases to us. We
Right.
are the agency. We do have HUD money that comes in for our fair housing cases. And,
But
Is there,
as far as
I was just
the
wondering, is there
you know,
other external factors that are contributing to your overload that have to do with the disappearance of other funding sources?
not to my understanding, right?
Okay, all right.
it's just the overwhelming nature of the work. And the fact that the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, only has those two people doing the work that they're responsible for on their side. And we do all of the other pieces, for the state, on this side. And just, so it for those folks that are looking at the comment that Amanda made about people aren't all, looking for some substantial, like windfall or anything else. I'll give you a very quick, specific example. It was a support animal.
I'm so sorry. My child got suspended from the
Oh, no.
after school program and they are waiting for me, so I am so sorry.
Thank you.
Life happened. And so what this situation was, one of our fellow Vermonters went to a concert. It was on her birthday and she had her support animal. And the people at the venue said, no, you can't let that dog in here. Just like that. No explanation. I don't care if it's a sport dog, blah, 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 blah. You can't let that dog in this room. Needless to say, that went over like something church, so to speak. But anyways, that being said, she filed a complaint. And all she wanted back from them at the end of the day was an apology and a ticket to the next concert. That's what she wanted back, and have them trained in how to respond to support animals. That's what she came. That was her mission. And we were able to accomplish that for her. It all happened. But imagine, you know, I mean, if you're in a space where you needed that level of support, you know, your support animals accepted everywhere else. And people understand, and you go to this thing on your birthday and you bring 4 friends and you get kicked out. No, you know, that's not cool. But anyways, it's those types of things that really happen, you know, and those are some of the real outcomes, you know, too. And that's what, if you look at each, when you get to that point and Big comes in and explains, you know, our structure and how it works, it'll make sense. You know, so hopefully this helps from a context perspective.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions about this bill? I think we will have testimony next week from the Human Rights Commission. I will get language, I'm sure, for the BAA, which I will put into a document, which I will send all of you. It's going to be a simple letter to the Appropriations Committee saying, here's what our priorities are for the BAA. So much to VHCD, so much, and some language added here. And we have to rank them, and we can do that. And I'll send it to you all, and then tomorrow at 11, that'll be a public document. Tomorrow at 11, we'll decide, do we agree? You know, everybody can agree or not. Hopefully, we're not going to send a letter to them, appropriation, saying, here's what we really think you should do by a vote of 6-5. But so we'll work it out. And we will have language in there from HRC as well. For those of you who are new to the legislature, the BAA generally, the adjustment gets out of here very quickly. It'll get onto the floor very quickly. We'll vote it out, but then it has to go to the Senate. By the time it goes to the governor and is signed, it's at least March, end of March, can be later. And is that then the money's available? So the money can be available in April or May. With the budget, if something is in the budget in BAA, they get the money before the end of the fiscal year. Not a lot before the end of the fiscal year, but before the end. If we put something in the budget is signed by the governor, and assuming there isn't a veto and a veto override or whatever, a whole further discussion, but in the normal course of things, the budget becomes effective on July 1. And then the money becomes available to agencies almost right away. But sometimes there's a whole process to get the money to the agencies. And so the HRC, for example, might get the money in late July or August. They know they can start advertising because they have, they know that the money is there. But as a practical matter, then they have to advertise and then they have to select, et cetera. So we're talking about later. So there is a difference of maybe, I guess what I'm saying is it's advantageous to be in the BAA, but it isn't like it's a whole different world. It's a matter of 4 months or something like that. And so often when I was on appropriations, I was telling the people I was assigned to work with, you really want to make the case that you are going to have an advantage. Those 4 months, 3-4 months are going to really make a difference to you. I think my own view, which is why I will put something in the draft letter for you all, is that the HRC is in a bit of a crisis mode because they're actually turning away applicants, which they are required under state law to take. And so arguably they could use the extra 3 or 4 months for some people. whether whether we or the appropriations committee will go along with the full suite of what they're asking for is an issue for another day. I mean, it's part of this bill. We will have to decide what we think, but we don't have to decide it tomorrow. Is that, does everybody understand? Good.
Thank you.
I think we are at an end. Thank you so much, Coach. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you all
And
for your time.
we